happy to introduce to you Ameyah Cohen. She is the founder of the Woman Rising Mystery School, an international school for women to remember earth wisdom, ancient mysteries, and walk the path of the rose. Through Ameyah's intensive training and embodiment, she expertly guides women to activate their soul essence and awaken the Gaia and Grail codes within. She is also the founder of a line of plant essences. She first fell in love with plant medicine as an environmental studies major in Vermont. After writing a thesis on plant spirit medicine, she continued to follow the callings of the plants. They led her to a 2-year vocation studying plant spirit medicine, shamanic journey work, and other spiritually healing modalities. After meeting her teacher and mentor, David Dalton, Ameyah experienced the profound power of flower essences in her own healing work. 20 years later, her journey with the plants blossomed into hundreds of clients supported as a flower essence practitioner, hundreds of practitioners trained in her certification program, which I took in 2015, and I'm sure also hundreds of women now who have experienced the Woman Rising Mystery School. And you can find Ameya at womanrisingmysteryschool.com. Thank you for being here, Ameya.
Thank you so much. I have tears in my eyes. There's something about the way that you speak and bring things forward that touches me. So thank you. I'm grateful to be here.
It's good to be with you here across the continent.
Yeah.
Ameya is in Southern California and I am in Pennsylvania. And so we feel the energy of North America today.
Yeah.
So if we end up talking about plant medicine, that's wonderful. But as I told you, I really felt that for this conference and this time that we're in 2022, what I really wanted to bring forward and bring into this conference is your expertise with working with the energies of the divine feminine and initiating other people into those energies. So I wanted to ask you as we begin, how are you currently perceiving the divine feminine and what the divine feminine means for us in this time when so many people are really endeavoring to renew the wellness of people and planet?
It's a big question.
Yeah, start anywhere.
So there's a couple things that come forward. First is how, as you were talking, it's like how we define the divine feminine and the sacred feminine, because just the word feminine has had so many projections and definitions and labels placed on it. And I think that makes us all a little confused, of, well, I want to be in my feminine, or I want to get out of my masculine, or I want this energy embodied more, but it's also like kind of unclear of what that even means. So I just thought maybe that would be a good starting point, at least for me to share beliefs that I carry. I think it's, and for me, talking about anything always comes back to the earth. So as a starting point, if you're going like, I don't know the energies of the sacred feminine, of the divine feminine, those words are interchangeable, look to Gaia. The Gaia is the feminine goddess of the earth. And there's so many, I'm looking out the window, it's just like, there's so many ways that we can look at the life cycle. And of course, creation cycle needs the masculine and feminine, but the earth itself as a feminine resonance is an amazing place to begin the inquiry and then the embodiment. And then the other piece that I want to say is when I think about the feminine, to really do it justice, I want to just bring forward the lens of the solar feminine and the lunar feminine, because the lunar feminine, I think, is the one we think of generally when we think of the feminine. The lunar feminine is that softer, receptive, intuitive, dreamy essence. But then there's the solar feminine that we all carry, that is more of the outward, the doing, the get things done, the warrioress, the illuminator of truths. And we absolutely need that at this time. Well, we've always needed that, but at this specific time in humanity, as systems that are holding so tight are perhaps going to crumble or disorganize or reorient, that solar feminine is part of that process. So, I think, and I'm saying that because I know that so many women, whether it's in their relationship, their marriage, or their work, or whatever it is, there's judgments placed on us for being too, quote unquote, masculine. There's shame, there's conditionings. And so we go, well, I don't want to be that. So, and I also know I don't want to run that energy also all the time. And there is the masculine, and there's also the solar feminine. And the solar feminine is needed, it's wanted, and it's part of who we are as women. So that just feels, all of that feels important as you've asked me that question, because those are the frames and the lenses through which I look at it all when we're talking about inviting women into that layer of themselves, or initiating women to remember that part of themselves is, what is that?
Yes.
That's the beginning point. And really like deconstructing that, pulling the true frequency of that out of our patriarchal system so we understand.
Yes. No, I really appreciate that you began there. And when you were talking about how so many women have experienced being judged and even criticized and condemned for being too masculine, I think many or most of us have also, possibly in the workplace or in other settings, been judged, criticized, even condemned for being too feminine. So the whole arena of being a woman, the feminine, not even to speak of the divine or sacred feminine, is incredibly confusing right now. I think a lot of women feel like, I'm not even going to engage because you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't, wherever you do engage. So how do you welcome or mentor women to engage in a way that feels safe and, I mean, I'm looking for some word that's a little softer than productive, but I guess worthwhile? What do we do with this mess?
Yeah, well, here's the thing, is that I do believe what we're all looking for to experience, whether we use these words or not, is to ultimately know the feeling of harmony. I was going to say harmonization, but really it could be either one. Of harmony of not just the masculine and feminine within ourselves, but all of the polarities above and below, within, without, because actually all of that is what creates magic. And that's what creates a really satisfying and fulfilled life. And I say that, like, I say those words really intentionally because, and men as well, but as women, from the time we're, 3 feet high, we get so many messages of what our life is supposed to look like. And the reality is, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter who you marry, if you marry, what your job is, if you have children, if you choose not to have children, all of those things. What matters is that we live in a way that we feel satisfied and fulfilled, or else life becomes really torturous in a lot of ways. And so many of us are just like kind of clawing to find and experience satisfaction. And so your question is, quite simply, we just have to start with self. We have to start with self, and we have to go, okay, in this moment, because we're ever evolving and things are going to change and the answer will always change. What do I want and how do I want to be? How do I want to live? What feels really important to me? And I think obviously with this pandemic and with lots of things that have been invisible becoming visible, there's been deeper inquiry for all of us, like what do I want this life to look like? How do I want to spend my time? And how do I want to be, really be, not just do, but how do I want to be? And so it all starts from within. And it's this harmony of bringing all parts of you into wholeness.
Yeah, and that comes back to the lunar and the solar feminine, right?
Yeah. But it takes tremendous willingness and it takes tremendous courage, because in order to change your life, you have to change yourself. And easier said than done. And yet it's the most exquisite, life-altering journey that one can go on, I believe.
Yes, and it's for the collective as well as the personal, right? I think you and I and many, many others right now believe that each person's journey of engaging with genuine sacred feminine energies, and we'll note that people of any gender can do this, each person's journey of engaging with these genuine sacred feminine energies is contributing to something that needs to happen on this planet as a whole, because we have been so hijacked by, I guess I'll call it for shorthand, the abusive or excessive form of some of the masculine energies.
Right. And within that, we have been led to believe that we're separate from each other, or that we're separate from the earth, which is the biggest, it's actually the primal wound, right? That we're separate from spirit, we're separate from Gaia, we're separate from each other, and we're separate from even our own self. Yeah. And so what you and I are talking about, what you just brought forward, is we're not just doing it for our own selves to have this egoic experience. We're doing it because we're actually interconnected species. We're interconnected within the web of life. And what we do for self genuinely becomes what we do for the all. And we see that, right? We see when one person rises, it inspires us, and it makes us go like, I want to be part of that movement, or I want to do that too. And so it kind of reframes this very centered, personally centered ideology that most of us have been born and raised into. It's not that. That's an illusion to keep us, I don't know, to keep us somehow oppressed. But what we do for self, we do for the all. What we do when you work on yourself, it serves your family, your children, your partner, your work. It serves how you treat the earth. I don't think we can have any conversation about the sacred feminine and our initiation into that without talking about how we treat the earth, because they're one and the same. And it all just comes back to that. It all just becomes back to our connection with the seen and the unseen.
Yeah. Well, and earth, more and more people are remembering, as indigenous peoples all over the planet have always known, that earth is a flaring forth of the divine feminine. She's an expression of that fertility and growth and support and lusciousness and so much more.
Yeah, absolutely.
I may occasionally mute myself. My beloved dog is right next to me snoring, and I don't know if you can hear her or not, but I sure
No,
can.
not at all. I cannot.
Okay, well, that's good. She likes to be right nearby, and there's
No,
nothing I
she's
can
like,
do about
yeah,
it except embrace
you're
it.
talking my thing. I'm part of this
Totally. Oh, I
too.
know. No, she really is.
She's really part of this.
Yeah, she is. She's definitely a lover of the earth and, well, me. So where do you start with women? Or, I mean, ideally, lots and lots and lots more people get to go through your Woman Rising Mystery School. But if someone is listening to this and thinks, I feel called to what Ameyah is talking about, but I am really not sure where to begin. Or, maybe some people have begun, but they don't have enough community to recognize that they're already on this path. So
I mean, it's interesting you just said that, because actually that was going to be my first thing that I offered, is find others, because part of this longing, because that's what it really is, part of this longing to commune with the sacred feminine, to basically know thyself, because that's what it is. It's a longing to know self, is to be in communion, to be in relationship with other people who feel that same longing. And then you create that belonging, right? The longing to be creates that. And that piece that I was talking about, where we feel so separate from and so isolated and different and all these things, that sense of belonging, there's just like, there's a relief, right? Like you can exhale and you can actually engage in the journey of this remembrance from a more nourished place. And that takes the ability to be intimate and vulnerable with others, for sure. But it's a simple thing that most of us can have access to. And if you can't find it physically, there are so many online communities at this point, and Zoom has been incredible in that way for really helping to feel connected to others. And then, of course, you have to have an intention. Like, why are you doing this? Because it takes a lot of effort. And your intention could be really broad, like, I want to connect with this part of myself, this part of spirit, or it could be really super specific. I know that when I connect with this part, my painting and my artistry will take off, and I want to serve in this way. So we can be specific, but you have to have, that golden compass in your own self that leads you forward in the direction. And that really becomes, to me, that's the devotional path, that your devotions, your intentions become the fuel through which you're constantly, following the threads, the morsels that are laid out by the divine orchestration of the feminine. And that can be done through all different ways. I mean, for me, I have a young child, and I work, and I have a partner, and I have friends. Life is full, right? We all have full lives. And so we pick what is going to most serve that forward movement. So for me, creating ritual, whether it's 5 minutes or 20 minutes. And I have certain places on the land that I live on that I know I can go and drop in. And I just offer my prayers. I offer my gratitude. I offer my visions. And those, there's an expression I learned from Martine Prechtel, beautiful author and teacher, about feeding the holy, right? So if you want a relationship with the divine feminine in our world, we just go like, well, give it to me, give it to me, give it to me, give it to me. That's the patriarchal world. I experience it a lot in my courses that I teach. It's like, I'm just going to show up and I'm going to take everything that Ameya has. Mm-hmm. And this is a reframe of relationship, relating with, reciprocity. So if you're wanting to know the divine feminine, you're creating relationship. You're saying, I'm here, and yes, I really want to receive, and I want to know thyself, and I'm going to feed you. I'm going to nourish you so that we're in a partnership. And that's the only way that it's sustainable, right? So you're talking about women who are just going like, I don't know what to do. They're just like, forget it, right? Or they start, some practice and then they just go like, forget it. And it's because in my experience, what I witness is that the realization and the commitment that you're actually part of a greater relationship has gone missing, because that's just not what we've been taught. We just go like, I want this and I want it now. And here I am. Why aren't you coming?
Yeah.
But it takes devotion. So for me, I go, oh, I just need to sit. I need to offer. I need to feed the holy so that not only can I continue this body to be a conduit for that which wants to come forth from the divine feminine, but I serve her. And I serve whatever messages that I'm receiving that are coming from her. And I trust that.
Yes.
And that's,
and
yeah.
I serve that part of myself, right? Because I think so many of us suppress that inner divine feminine wisdom.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be ritual. That's something that I do, but it's something where there's a giving back. There's what we've seen so much in the world is actions that are unsustainable.
Yes.
And this is the divine feminine is calling to create not just regeneration, but generation itself, so that we thrive individually, we thrive collectively, and our planet thrives. And so rituals, the way that I do it, or you could journal, or you could dance, or you could offer service to those in need, whatever it is that you need to do, and a compilation of all of those things, right? It's just that there has to be the intention, the willingness, and the action. And that's where the solar feminine piece really comes into play. So if we're just doing parts of it, we'll receive benefits for sure. But if there's a wanting to step into deeper devotion and a devotional path, there has to be more of you that steps in fully.
Yeah.
And it's worth it.
Yes. I really appreciate that you addressed this as a path of devotion. And I was thinking as you were speaking that in many ways right now, we are probably seeing some significant dissolution of religious traditions or religion as an institution. But one thing that our ancestors within the context of religion seem to have really gotten right is this devotion. So I'm thinking of, we maybe especially see it in Hinduism and Christianity with the extensive displays of reverence and devotion, very often for the divine feminine. And the way that you framed that as needing to be relational, I think is so important. I like to talk about how we have to come into an era, we have to create an era in which we really live with Earth as our life partner and recognize that is a collaborative relationship. It was never meant to be one where we are only taking. It was certainly never meant to be one where we are abusive and destructive. But the path of devotion really weaves that together as a reminder that this needs to be reciprocal, it needs to be relational, it needs to be collaborative, whether you are working with the divine or a teacher or the planet or the meadow near your house or whatever it is.
Yeah. I mean, just even the word devotion, it's, that which you're devoted to. So you have a loving of it. And so you devote, right? And we think of that in an easy way, like a mother to a child. But there's so many ways that we prioritize certain things that we love, that we are devoted to. And yourself has to be way up there on that list. And we're just emanations of the divine. So when we take care of this physical, emotional, mental, energetic, and spiritual temple, we become the living embodiment of the feminine. And it's a journey. It's not like you take a weekend class and you're good to go. This is that's what I'm saying. It's a relationship that you're tending and till your last breath.
Yes.
So there's no like mastery here. That's not what this is about. It's not like, can I get there the quickest and master it in the shortest time frame? It's like savor. I mean, I could cry, just like savor every moment of this experience with the divine.
Yeah.
And our life moves so fast, that savoring is something we have to do very consciously.
Yes. Well, and arguably that in itself may be a more feminine energy that needs to be resurrected in this time, as you're saying, when
it's true.
The rational and the technological and the industrial and the speed has dominated to excess.
That is true. Yeah. I do believe, as you say that, because I've never had a corporate job. So in some ways it's like easier for me to say certain things because I've always had my own time flow and rhythm and, all of these things. I do believe, I know I keep bringing it back to the earth, but that's just my view on everything. When we live connected to the rhythms and the seasons, we learn that like nuanced subtlety of that savoring, because it's not something easy for us to learn in the outer expression of the world. That's like, how much did you get done today? And were you productive? And what were your big wins and victories? And, it's, so we have to we really have to look at the rhythms and the seasons of Gaia to learn how to slow down, to learn to take that inhale, to learn to take the exhale, to savor, to be, to die.
Yeah, I appreciate that you emphasize that also, because for a couple of reasons. I mean, one, Gaia seriously needs our loving attention right now, and our own survival with Gaia seriously needs our loving attention.
Yeah.
But also I was thinking about how for some people, religious and spiritual traditions are accessible, they feel safe, but other people right now are feeling very disaffected or disconnected from religious and spiritual traditions. And so I really appreciate your emphasis on connection to Gaia as a devotional path, a spiritual path, a self-nurturing path, a path of honoring the divine feminine, because that arguably, that Gaian connection can be accessible to anyone,
right? Whether
or not you feel like the older or newer religious and spiritual traditions are available to you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And one other thing that I wanted to say when you said well, what can somebody do? Community for sure. And then, implementing certain practice, having an intention, your willingness, implementing certain practices. And then, thousands of years ago, what we would have done was have an experience of apprenticeship, because we are removed because of the way our world has been, or even if somebody's been on a path but they want to go deeper, finding some sort of mentor in human form, that's always been my greatest gifts, finding knowledgeable, wise, people that I'm just like, I want to sit and I want to absorb everything, and really using it as an apprenticeship, as a part of the quest, because there are many things that we can do solo. And I do believe all of the devotions, the ritual, the ceremony, the intention, the dancing, the, laying your body on the earth, all of these things. And for a lot of us, we need a teacher. And that's important, to find somebody with integrity and who's willing to teach you and share, and not just teach you like from here so your mind is appeased, but really in a somatic way as well. So your body is remembering, your cells are remembering.
Yeah, and I think we're learning that relationship with the teacher, well, of course it should be sacred, and that person should be a resource, but not a guru. And that transition is happening right now, I think, where more and more people are recognizing that guru relationship can really go sour, to put it mildly, but the teacher as a resource and guide in a context where often you realize that to some extent, you're remembering your own sacred wisdom. I agree with you. It's invaluable. And I've had so many teachers who have just been completely pivotal for me.
Yeah, I think what you're saying too is like, for people to pay attention, like, use your discernment, right? Of if there's energies of power over within that dynamic, then it's actually not a healthy student-teacher relationship. But the reason I use the word apprenticeship is, in its true form, apprenticeship is like the power with that the teacher's not there to just like, show how great you are. The teacher's there because if they teach it well, and if they pass it on well, the lineage of knowledge continues. Yes. and actually grows and potentizes, because with each generation comes higher frequency beings. So if there is that energy of power over, you want to go like, thank you, no thank you. And really being aware of that. But the with, the relationship with is what you're looking for.
Yes.
Yeah.
One of the perspectives that seems important to me lately is that we need to be cultivating human creative energies and inspiration, because so much needs to change on this planet if we're going to have the human species continue here in a robust and flourishing way, and if all of the beloved aspects and members of our planetary community are going to continue thriving. I wonder if you have views on how the sacred feminine energy is an important support if we are trying to cultivate that human creativity and inspiration for change and renewal of existing systems and the bringing in of new ones.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what you're talking about is the experience of creation, right? Recreation, creation, right? And so you need the feminine, just like you need the masculine. And we've just over relied and over depended on the masculine for every answer and every system. And the only way that we are going to create is the sacred marriage of those two. And really, because there is so much that we can like kind of pound, against the masculine. And we also need to leave space for that whole masculine to arise, so that marriage can really come into place. Because we don't want the sacred feminine just taking over everything.
Yeah.
We need that sacred marriage and that communion for creation to actually like on a physiological level, right? On an energetic level, we need these two polarities in harmony with each other. And so, yes, absolutely. And I think this is where the feminine comes into play even more, right? Because we need to dream something new right now. We might have this thought of like, this isn't working, or this needs to change, or this is really horrific, or whatever words we use when we're pointing out injustices and inequalities. But what we also need is the space to dream the world awake, really. And that is part of the feminine energy, specifically those lunar feminine energies that I was speaking about before. So we need time. And you know, I'm just like kind of circling back through what I said earlier, that like the willingness and the devotion to go, I'm just going to set aside some time today to just be. Or I'm going to set an intention before I dream tonight, because we can't we can't just be in that active role all the time of like, I got to come up with a solution, but what's the solution? And I don't know the solution. We need to dream it. We need to feel it. That's where we access that inspirational, creative force. And of course, the feminine is that creative, you know, spark. But we need to orient our lives so that that comes in, right? So like the other day I was doing some writing actually, and I was thinking, you know, how so many of us avoid the quiet or just being, right? It's hard. Like our minds are just going. We don't want to be still. We've got a list of 10,000 things we have to do, or when we get still, like it's really painful because we actually get to feel what we're avoiding.
Mm-hmm.
Yet I realized as I was writing, and probably we all know this, it was just one of those simplistic moments of awareness for myself, is that, you know, in the silence is actually the place that all the answers exist. So even though it seems silent, it's like, it's actually very full. And because we just quiet everything. So taking the time, which I know, it's like, I feel it too. It's like, sometimes it feels so hard to take the time. But when I take the time, I can hear. We're walking vessels of creation and inspiration. The divine feminine is pouring forth through this vessel. And we have to just open to hear it. And then believe that what we're hearing is true. And so absolutely, I think it's all right here. That's the wildest part, is like, it's all waiting for us to just open our eyes and open our ears and use our finger, open all of our senses, you know, to just taste, hear, touch, smell it all, and say yes. And it's hard sometimes to carve that time out, but it's the most simple acts that we can possibly do.
Like an act of creative, well, I don't want to say resistance. I mean, that actually is creative resistance against planetary systems gone amok, but I don't like to frame it that way. I was thinking though, as you were talking about this vital need that you were just addressing, for us to make space for the wisdom to come in, because so much of the activism, I mean, so I was originally trained as a historian, so I do think in those terms often. And I think we can say the last couple of centuries on planet Earth have been very activist in ways that are just tremendously important. And we could spend so much time talking about the contributions of activism addressing sexism and racism and poverty and all of these things. So important. But a lot of our activism can have a tendency to skip this part you were just talking about of bringing in the wisdom, the grounding. And of course, some activist leaders have been amazing at that. I mean, I'm thinking right now of Martin Luther King Jr. and Mother Teresa and Thich Nhat Hanh. Certainly Desmond Tutu, who just left us after an incredible life of contribution. So we do have these wonderful examples of people who actually enact this divine interior marriage that you were talking about, of the activism in the world, but it is supported by the quiet time of bringing in the wisdom. You may be thinking of other examples of people you want to name, but I feel that's so vital for us now in going forward. This superficial 3D, I'm going to be mad and name the problem and yell about it. It's so passé for me, because what we're really looking for is the wisdom path of action.
Yeah, it's some sort of bridging, right? It's like the both and of, I think that's how most of us start out on like spiritual or emotional healing path. We go, you know, my mother did this or my father did this, and I don't want to do that. And that's like the first thing, right? Like, I don't like this system. It's the first awareness that we go, I need to change something. And so when we have that, it's great. It really is the first step. And then the idea is like, it doesn't work long term to just keep pointing the finger outward. We have to go, okay, how do I want to be? How do I want to show up? And what do I need to do? And for me, when you're committed to your devotional path, clarity always arises. And you were talking about, you know, creativity and inspiration. It's like even just sitting and breathing, your breath is, you know, in Chinese medicine, it's inspiration from the divine. And so just like take a moment and find your breath. That's where the wisdom, as you're speaking, is. That's where the inspiration, that's where the creativity. And, you know, again, looking at the earth, it's like the earth doesn't bloom all year, all the time. It's not like in its full outward magnificence. It has that, which is kind of like the outer activism part of like, I'm creating this solution, I'm getting it done. And then the earth harvests, and then the earth falls fallow and rests and restores and goes within. And we have to do that same thing. We can have the prayer of the quiet and the devotions, and then we hear what has to be done, and then we do it, and then we restore and we feed the holy. And then it has to be like that, or else you burn out, you get jaded, you're just like, forget this, or you go live in a cave, right? It's just like, you have to have the both and to actively be the change you wish to be, and to be sourced from the sacred feminine, from the divine. You have to.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to offer you a couple questions. We could talk about one or maybe both of them as we move toward the end of our conversation. Your pick, or if there's something else you want to address, that's fine too. So one possible thing to talk about is, what kind of transformations do you see in the lives of your students who are on this path? Or if you would like to share your vision of what life on earth might look like as we walk this path of integration, or anything else.
Well, I'm a Gemini, so, you know, it's like, that's a hard one to pick. So I might just do a little bit of each.
Yeah.
It's really hard to quantify what happens in women's lives that I get to witness as students. as you come into intimacy with self, everything changes. And some of those changes are scary because it means that things in your life that you love or are familiar with may change. And some of those things are very exciting. You know, I've had women who have stopped drinking after 20 years, or even just acknowledged that they had a problem with alcohol and then stopped. I've had women say they're, done with their marriages and complete, and then 2 months later circle back and create a marriage with that same person that's healthy and whole and resonant. I've had women decide they want to get pregnant, and I've had women decide they actually are really quite fulfilled without having children. I've had women put themselves out in the world with their artistry and their like it's everything. It's basically the more intimate you become with self. That's what I'm saying, that the clarity of who you are is pristine, and you just keep following that. So
and the
it's pretty,
unfolding, right?
yeah. And it's pretty extraordinary. And then there's just small things, seemingly small things, where women just like, I have boundaries now, or I feel more confident in myself, or I'm loving my body, and how that then ripples out into their lives. And it's just, it's such a blessing in my life to witness transformation. It's just, and a lot of women don't, by the time like we're complete with something, they don't even remember how they were when they started, and I do. And it's just, it's such a profound privilege to witness life-altering conscious transformation, because it takes a lot of work. And then your second question, I feel like I could just like sob. I really, really do dream of a world where we love the earth. I mean, I dream of what that looks like, having schools for children, having corporations that serve, like that is something that I find myself dreaming about a lot. And I know on the deepest place of me that when we're intimate with the earth, we just know everything that is important. And all the other things in our lives that are so highly distractive just fall away, because they are distractions that keep us from deep relationship. And of course, I dream of a world where, there's room at the table for everyone, and money is not the sole driver.
Yeah, but life is, that nurturing life becomes the priority, and then things like money are tools in the service of the nurturing of life.
Yeah. I also, one last thing, because I have so many dreams. I also, I really know the value of women belonging, and all the not good enoughs that we carry are able to be somewhat dissolved in process. And
and all
I
those
know,
aspects of I don't fit or I'm not safe.
right. And I know that everything that you're talking about with the sacred feminine and how do we rise into that and embody that, that can only happen when there is a group of people. And that sense of belonging is, it becomes, I feel, that the greatest anchor for the forward motion that we want to experience in the world. Because so I would say that as well. For sure.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
So we didn't end up finding our way to flower and plant essences today, but that's completely okay. And I'll tell listeners that Ameya and I spoke a few months ago on my podcast, Humans and Earth, and we talked almost entirely about flower and plant essences. And Ameya told a couple of wonderful stories about what it's like to interact with flower and plant essences. So that episode on the Humans and Earth podcast is available. But I know that through this conference, you're going to make available one of your flower essence trainings. Is that right? And I actually think that's a wonderful place for us, for you to talk about that, for us to move toward a conclusion, because for anybody who's looking for a specific way in to everything we've just talked about, working directly with plants is a path of lush richness, delight, and support and growth. So tell us a little bit about that class, and then any of your other offerings that are also out there for people to find.
Sure. So, my background is as an herbalist and in plant spirit medicine, as you spoke in my bio. And when I found flower essences, they felt like the most feminine medicine of the earth. And it was one of the reasons I was most attracted. They're soft, they're gentle, they work with the blueprint of your soul for you to release trauma or repair the experiences that created trauma and to create new ways of living and being. So they hold that at their core. They really hold that feminine layer that we're speaking about. And this is a 4-week home study course. So it's really an initiation journey or an introduction journey for those who might be interested in learning about flower essences and beginning to deepen into it. And so there's 4 different classes on what are they, why are they important, how do I make my own medicine, because that's part of this giving permission to be in your power and your truth and your wisdom. And it's so beautiful to collect essences. And then in week 3 or 4, we talk about different things that women go through: anxiety, depression, irritability, and what flower essences might be helpful, or learning how to create a formula for you or your family. So it's a beautiful way to begin to work with those medicines. It's called Flower Essence Alchemy. It's our home study course, and it's lovely. It's lovely.
Yeah. I love that you have created that, because people need the smaller, easier entry point. And I know you have extraordinary longer programs, but I just
not everyone wants to be. Not
everybody can start with a 12-week or something that's also at a higher price point. I just love that you have this introductory class.
Yeah. It's really sweet. Actually, I created it because people said, I don't want to take your practitioner program, but I really want to learn about flower essences. So it was really it was beautiful, because it was that reciprocal ask and the request that I granted that.
And then you do also have the longer flower essence practitioner training and the Woman Rising Mystery School. Is that correct?
Yeah. So everything's under the umbrella of the Woman Rising Mystery School. So the home study course, the 6-month practitioner program, then we have Priestesses of the Rose, which is a year and a day priestess devotional path. And then I do different courses throughout the year, kind of like pop-up classes. I just did one in December called Blueprint, which was working with the energetics of your business, which was so amazing. And then we have this great community online as well that's free, and open to anyone. So there's a lot going on, and it's important to gather and to find like-minded people and to just find resources. I mean, we also have on the website just free resources. ebooks on flower essences for the mother wound, moon calendars, high holy date calendar. Like, we've just got so many free resources as well. So you don't have to spend money, but I want you to have resources that support your growth and evolution, your remembrance.
Yes, so beautiful. I have really been thrilled over the last 7 or 8 years to watch your offerings expand at all of these different access points, serving all kinds of needs and desires that women have. And I'm so much in admiration of what you're creating. And thank you so much for talking with us.
Thank you so much. I just love and adore you. I'm so grateful to spend time with you.
Right. Bye for now.
This has been a presentation of New Earth One Network, your home for New Earth living. Access information, education, and videos on living from the heart in unity consciousness. Visit newearth1.com.